Welcome to our carbon measurement and reduction webinar. We're here to try and demystify some of the challenges and opportunities around carbon in the wine industry. We're talking about GHG reduction, really. My name is Toby Webb, or Tobias Webb, if it's my mother calling, and I'm in her bad books. And I'm the founder of SWR. We started out back in about 2019, really as a kind of media platform, and we've developed since 2021 with the support of Systembolaget and many others, and Famille Perrin, to be now over 140 members working worldwide to try and drive collaboration in sustainability. We see it very much as our job to try and join the dots, and we're trying to do that today on carbon. We actually have a document which is all about what we do, and I'm not going to go into that in detail now, but we're going to post that in the chat so you can see that we're trying to address through collaboration all the different areas of the supply chain and the wine value chain with regard to sustainability. So we've got speakers here from different parts of the value chain as well, and they'll introduce themselves in just a moment. And really our theme is about reducing GHGs, enabling the reduction of them, and to try and have a conversation about collaboration and to hopefully try and work with some of you in the audience in the future to do so. There's going to be plenty of time for discussion, so you can use that Q&A function. And I really would like to thank David and his colleagues at Carbon Cloud for sponsoring today's session. That really helps us get these sorts of things on the road and moving. So thank you, David. We'll be doing more of these, and we think we can add some real value by bringing together folks from around the world. So joining me today is Sara Norell from Systembolaget, who's the Chief Assortment and Sustainable Purchasing Officer. David, as I mentioned, David Bryngelsson, who's the CEO of Carbon Cloud. Marie Fourure, maybe I've got that just about right, who's a CSR project manager at Famille Perrin, and Gael Bertrand, a materials expert in innovation and packaging, also from Famille Perrin. So we're going to start out by hearing from Sara about product carbon footprinting and Systembolaget's approach to this. Then I'm going to ask David a few questions. They've worked together with Systembolaget, but there's other things to discuss other than just that, which we're going to get into. And then we're going to hear from Marie and Gail on the approach at the other end of the value chain from Systembolaget on the producer side. So some different perspectives, and hopefully that will generate some great questions from you all, and you can put them in the chat. So as I mentioned before, if you missed it, we will be recording this, and we'll send out a note summary and a recording of this as a podcast on our various podcast channels. Just search for Sustainable Wine. So Sara, thanks so much for joining us. Product carbon footprinting. Tell us about why you're doing this, how it perhaps fits with your wider strategy. And we all have lots of questions about it, so maybe you could start us off with an overview of what it means to you, kind of how it fits with where you are as a company and where you're at the moment.
The why, the most important why, is obviously because we are in a turmoil in the world where the global warming is increasing, and with that comes the Paris Agreement, and our owners who believe in meeting with those goals, and they say that we should be in the forefront. So that's one important part. The other one I would say is the expectations from the market, from consumers, who also believe that they think we're already sort of working with this very a lot. And there are obviously also regulatory requirements. Said that, looking at the total impact of Systembolaget's operations, 80% are from the supply chain. So we need to work in very close collaboration with our suppliers and producers around the world.
I actually assume that everybody would know who you guys are because we work with you so closely. But just for those who don't, maybe just give us the very quick headline on your organization before we go further.
Yes, we are the monopoly, the retail monopoly of alcoholic beverages in Sweden, and we are a large buyer of these products. We have 450 stores all around Sweden. We are 6,000 employees, and we buy quite a lot of wine. every year.
Excellent. Well, and let's hope we can make it more sustainable wine over time. That's our objective. And of course, one of the things SWR does is trying to work out what sustainability in wine means, and to try and get the various standards and certifications to agree on how these things are evolving. And that's something we're working on constantly. So specifically then, we've sort of seen the big picture there, Sara, and well put. Product carbon footprinting, it's something that's been around for 20 odd years. I can remember Tesco announcing they were going to do it for all products about 20 years ago, and then realizing how much it cost. And then we've seen a bit more of a step-by-step approach, I think, from retailers since then, given that it's a difficult area. Perhaps you could just give us an overview of what you're doing there and what it means.
No, but sustainability is a journey, and we actually started by putting very ambitious goals when it comes to more organic in our assortment. We said we want to achieve 10%, and actually in quite much faster than we thought. We reached 15% of the total assortment. For wine, it's been stable for quite a few years now, with 25% being organic. So that was the first step, being together with the social aspect, obviously, to make sure that the people working in the supply chain have good working conditions and human rights. Next step was to look into our carbon footprint, and when we did our assessment, we saw that a big part, was more than a fourth, was actually the packaging. So we started to work with packaging, starting to introduce packaging with lower carbon footprint, and lightweight bottles, obviously, but also cans and PET and tetras. But then a lot of producers came and said, but we are doing so much good things when it comes to reducing our carbon footprint. You can't just say that you are working with the packaging. We are doing things in the vineyards, we are doing things in production. So what can we do? So we actually came up with for us, the only solution, and it is to give producers, suppliers, the opportunity to report on what they are actually doing in all these different aspects. Obviously, when it comes to the packaging, because a glass bottle can be made in a factory with non-fossil fuel, which is a big difference in comparison with a bottle that's been made with fossil fuel. So we have now developed, and after also a lot of discussions with our supplier, the trade, a tool that is since yesterday available for anyone who would like to report on their carbon footprint. And it's packaging, it's production, it's farming, growing, and transport that's going to be included. So we are very excited, actually, because we hope that this will be a tool that can help our producers and suppliers to report, and also to see, where do I have my lowest hanging fruits? And hopefully there are also an opportunity to lower carbon footprint, but also possibly costs in the supply chain and production. So this is where we are right now.
So that's really the key point, isn't it? Is how do you turn this from looking like another request from a big retailer to a smaller producer into an opportunity? And what sort of lessons have you learned there about how you kind of frame it, and how do you change the conversation from being the slight eye rolling, another thing we have to do to sell wine to you, into opportunity? And that you mentioned cost savings already. I guess that's a significant factor.
I think this is really a challenge in many aspects, because we have a wine industry, talking about the wine now, a wine industry that is going through big changes. It's not only that farming is being challenged by weather that is unpredictable, etc., but it's also that people are drinking less in the world. Globally, sales are going down, volumes are being challenged. So you have to do that, taking that into consideration. At the same time, we want our suppliers and producers to do more things administratively. So yes, we need to do this one step by one step, and to be very humble as to make it as easy and as rewarding as possible. So the first step is to get people into just to play around with the tool, to see whether they can possibly report on one aspect, not all of them at the same time. And then we hope when we have get going a bit further, when we have been able to secure quality of the data, we also want to use the data so that it's a business opportunity. If you are able to lower your carbon footprint, there will possibly be a better placement in the store or more stores, and also the opportunity for our customers who would very much like to make sustainable, more climate efficient choices, to know what's the difference between two different products.
So that's the big carrot, isn't it? For some of them is, we like to simplify it sometimes as saying, sell more of the better wine. And I guess that's the incentive that some of them might have is, preferential shelf space, all other things being equal, of course. And I do understand you have other criteria that you have to work to. On the theme of collaboration, obviously you've been doing this as a pilot, and it's starting to be developed more and more. What sort of conversations and collaborations are you having with other actors in the retail space and elsewhere? Obviously, we know you're working with Carbon Cloud, but the other alcohol monopolies must be taking a keen interest in this, I guess.
Yes, our sort of closest friends, retail-wise, is the Vinmonopolet in Norway and Alko in Finland. And actually, the way we and what were going to measure has been developed together with them. And we also have contacts and with LCBO and SIQ in Canada. No ones are not yet where we are. We are sort of going a bit before the others, but there are a lot of interest. And we'd also have discussions with other big retailers in Europe. And I think this is very important in order to find synergies so that producers, suppliers don't find that there are a big difference between different players wanting to collect data. So I hope that more companies see it as an opportunity, not to develop something themselves, but to piggyback on what we are doing.
Well, that's the key thing, isn't it? To try and get that consistency, so that for a producer like Family Perrin, they're not producing 5 or 6 different sets of criteria for 5 or 6 different retailers. And I think our dream is perhaps to drive that consolidation a bit. So, Sara, in a big picture, what would you like those listening to this webinar, watching this webinar, what would you like them to do afterwards? So, go to your website, check out the tool. Where do you want it? Where do you want this to get to by, say 2030, or what's the kind of big picture as well?
To start with, be curious, one step at a time, because we had this supplier meeting yesterday where there are a bit of reluctance and a bit of worrying for what it's going to mean in the end. I think that it's about it's a learning journey together. So be curious and see the opportunities. And I think that most companies, they've done quite a few things that they can be proud of showing us when going into the tool and report.
Great. Well, we look forward to supporting the road to collaboration, and that's really SWR's role. If you have questions for Sara, please use the Q&A function. We do have time to get to them, so please do that. This is your chance to ask difficult questions if you want, and we can see some in the chat. Someone's asking, can we send the link that you spoke of? So perhaps you can add that to the chat. Sara, while I ask David to comment next, I've got some really interesting points from our preparation notes. David Bryngelsson, CEO of Carbon Cloud. Thank you for your support. I'm guessing you're not quite as well known as Systembolaget, so maybe you want to give us the 2-sentence summary on Carbon Cloud before we go further. David.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so Carbon Cloud, we are a SaaS company, so cloud-based software company based out of Sweden. We work with the food and beverage industry and help service with supply chain data for primarily climate, some other sustainability indicators too, but primarily climate. And so what would be, we can do PCFs for you, we can do scope 3 data for you, and importantly, connect whole supply chains. And we do from farm to store, primary data ingestion, the whole value chain, where the whole idea with this is to enable and unlock collaboration in the value chains, to be able to make sure that if someone does something great, investment on farm level in a country far away, the data and sort of performance can propagate through a value chain so that someone elsewhere is buying the product can then see that there is a performance improvement relating to climate then. And then hopefully prioritize the product on the store shelf or pay more or something like that to make sure, yeah, this whole data layer works so that collaboration really can work. That's what we work with.
Right. Well, I'd like to ask you in a minute about how we drive that kind of standardization and collaboration, because obviously, if
Yep.
I'm an investor in a SaaS company, I want them to have a kind of black box which delivers huge value for me as an investor, and that's always a challenge for any company. But before I get
Yeah.
you to answer that, I wanted to ask you about why is it you feel that the beverage industry has struggled on serious decarbonisation? What is it? I mean, every industry thinks they're special,
Yep.
but why has it been difficult in the beverage sector to get moving on this, perhaps? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe we could have been a bit quicker. What do you think?
Yeah, it definitely could have been a bit quicker. There are other verticals, say energy industry 30 years ahead, transport roughly 20 years ahead. So yes, could have been quicker, but there is a key difference here, which is if you take a car and you look at it, like take the transport industry, emissions happen when you drive the car. You can calculate very easily exactly how high the emissions are. How many liters of fuel have you burned? And you'll get the same answer every time. Every liter of diesel or every liter of gasoline will have the same amount of emissions every time. So the solution to the problem there is to stop burning the fossil fuel. So replace the combustion engine with something else like electrification. Of course, there are engineering challenges to that, but strategically it's very straightforward. And then there's just a question for a car manufacturer, when is the right time to invest heavily in this? And some have made better choices than others, but for sure, the car industry is doing very well now, and it is rapidly changing. When we look at the food and beverage industry, like the wine industry, there are no emissions when you consume the product. When you use the product, nothing happens. There are no emissions, and you can't look at the product. Like if you take the car again, you can open the bonnet and you can see is there an engine or not in the car. I mean, it's very, very easy to find out, right? But if you look at the bottle of wine, you have no idea if the emissions are high or low. And if you go one step further upstream, you're buying grapes, for example, or you're buying some intermediary product, you can't look at the grapes and say if the emissions are high or low. They look the same. You can judge quality, you can see the price and the quantity and these things that the industry is really, really good at optimizing for, but sustainability things such as climate are invisible. And that means that no one has really been able to strategize around it because you don't know if you, by default, are particularly good at it compared to your peers. You don't know what to do to get good at it. You don't know how to, like, you can't raise money to invest in something to improve your performance if you can't sort of sell that to your customer in a way where they truly value it. So you need that like for all these things to happen, you need to have data. You need to have really high quality data on emissions. Once you have that, if you have data for everything you buy, data for everything you produce, data for everything you sell, and the stuff you buy, you agree with your supplier with the data being true, the stuff that you sell, you agree with your customer about the data being true, then suddenly you can start strategizing and decide as a company, we want to move forward quickly and be maybe a high-priced option with low emissions, or you can decide, no, we want to move forward slower and a bit cheaper, or whatever. Like you can come up with whichever strategy you want, but you can at least have one. And the problem is, you went back to the Tesco example before. When this started out as manual exercises, calculating these things is hard. It's scientifically hard. You need a lot of data. It's hard to measure. Then you need to figure out how to calculate it. And people do differently, and it was has been very expensive for a long time. And that has meant that the data has never been to a quality level high enough to be used for decision support. And if it can't be used for decision support, well, you can use it for reporting maybe. You can draw some general conclusions, but you can't change anything. And that's what we are now really driving together with Systembolaget to get this to the next level so that it can be actually useful.
And how about the sort of standardization question? I mean,
Yeah.
it's all very well to have one system here, but if someone else is doing another one over there, I mean, it's kind of a question for Sara, really. How do we make sure that, you guys can make money, but also that the standardization goes, far and wide rather than being different in different sort of categories or areas?
Yes. Yeah, I think that, David, you have an important role to play here also, to make sure that you work in collaboration with others, because we want this to be sort of in cooperation, not only in the wine industry or the drinks industry, but also within the expertise that you have, David. And that's something
Yeah, if I may answer a little bit on the question as well, I think we have had, there are different roads towards the standardization, how you can do it. And there are some that have been driven by, say, the PEF and ISO and so on, trying to standardize how to do this. They standardize it a lot, but definitely not to a level where it can really be used for decision support. Because depending on, you make so many assumptions, there's no agreed quality assurance metric. There's no, there are so many things that make it still not really comparable. And then you have actors such as us, where we say we can solve it, we can standardize it all the way. We control all the calculations. We can ensure that all competitors use exactly the same calculation models, have exactly the same secondary data. We can quantify the data quality and all these things, right? And then the problem gets solved within our ecosystem, all right? And then you come back to your investor thing. I mean, of course, investors love monopolies, right? And then you're worried about what about the market forces? And I would say, if we look at where we are as the market and trying to solve this problem, I think worrying about monopoly right now is a bit premature. We are finally starting to see some changes happen. It's not us. There are a few others that are now also starting to see this happen, where we get numbers, a few hundreds at least, or so suppliers and companies connected, and this starting to build up. And then, of course, there are fora where we collaborate with others, our competitors, so to speak, on how to long-term manage this, to build sort of standardization formats that truly work, where data sharing truly can work. And I mean, this problem will be solved. There are very, very strong incentives for everybody involved to solve this, even if, of course, we would love to have as much as possible of the market. The market is large. There will be many players.
So, of course, market development is supported by regulation, particularly in the EU, which is increasing. So how do you talk to customers or prospective customers about really making that business case? I mean, that's what everybody is asking, particularly in the wine sector and many others these days. How do you make that case from turning it into a sort of compliance thing into that business opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few, depending who you talk to, right? It needs to start with the company we start working with, such as Systembolaget or some else, large producer or retailer or something. They need to have a reason to wanting to work strategically with a question. I mean, it might start with just a reporting assignment. They need lots of data because they have 10,000 products from such and such many suppliers, and they need a lot of data for that. And that's where it often starts. And then there is the question like, yeah, and they see eventually 2030 getting closer, 2045 being on the horizon. We need a sort of actionable plan for decarbonization. Our owners want it. Our customers, quite often it's the customers who want it. Like, you don't want to be a business liability to your customer by not having a plan for how to get the emissions down. And then coming to the realization, as Sara talked about in the beginning, 80% of our emissions or 90% of our emissions or something might be scope 3. Meaning suppliers. You have no control of your suppliers' production, but you're suddenly responsible for reporting on them, on their emissions, and you're responsible for figuring reduction out with them. And then the case is quite simple. All right. We can then we can help you talk to your suppliers in a way that works. And there are a few things. I mean, we talked about the standardization, and then there is like getting the calculations done quickly so that there is less cost and work involved for everybody. And then another really, really important key challenge, which has to do with intellectual property. A lot of the data required to make these calculations is really sensitive. Who your exact suppliers are, your specific production processes and recipes, stuff like that. It can be very, very sensitive. Typically, you don't want your customers to know these things, right? And then meaning if everyone's going to use the same model and you want them to share data that I want to share, it's very, very tricky. So something that we have learned here is that it's essential that everybody controls their own data. Everyone works in their own entirely locked info secure environment where they upload their data. It's being used for calculations. The results are shared. Your customer gets a standardized report for the footprints and data quality stuff, but they don't get to see any of that sensitive data. And then typically then starting with a few key suppliers, talking about it and explaining how this all works, them realizing, hey, this is actually pretty good. Suddenly then someone in the sustainability department might realize, with this, I can get an ROI case to my management about making such and such investments because we have a customer who will give us privileges or pay more or whatever it is if we get our emissions down. And then people in these supplier companies realize, hey, there's a business in me here for me here. And then this kind of transforms it from this reporting burden to business conversations.
Thank you. That's a good and clear and comprehensive overview of the journey from compliance to opportunity. So thank you, David. So let's turn to Famille Perrin now. Marie, why don't you start us off? I mean, you've been listening intently, you and Gael. I mean, you're not unfamiliar, of course, with all of this. I mean, you supply wine into Systembolaget, but of course, producers are under a lot of pressure. So tell us about the initiatives you've been working on. I'm really interested to hear both of your perspectives as well a bit later on what you've heard from David and from Sara. But perhaps, Marie, for those who don't know Perrin, perhaps tell us a couple
Yes.
sentences
So
about what you do.
Famille Perrin, we are producing wine in the south of France. We are exporting 80% of our wines. So we are selling in many countries, UK, Canada, US, also Norwegian, and Asia, every countries. We have brands like La Vieille Ferme, known as chicken wine, Château de Beaucastel, Maison et Domaine des Alexandrins, Miraval, which is rosé wine with Brad Pitt, and other brands. And so, of course, we take the carbon matter very seriously. We are measuring it every year since 3 years. And we have also an action plan to reduce our carbon emissions that we are following every year. And in our carbon footprint, the most impactful is the glass. It's representing 50% of our carbon footprint. And because we are exporting our wines, it's very important to reduce the weight of our glass or to find other alternatives like cans or bag-in-box that are growing at Famille Perrin. And so I can speak about the reducing of the weight of the glass. So for 15 years, we have been using a model of bottle which is named Ecova 2 from Veralia. It weighs 395 grams. And we use it for the biggest brands like La Vieille Ferme and Perrin. And recently, we have moved to a lighter bottle version of 370 grams. So it's only 20 grams of difference, but if we are selling a lot, it's a huge impact. So it's for La Vieille Ferme and Studio by Miraval and for a lot of markets. And we are now trying a new bottle, which is the lightest in the market with Veralia. It's a bottle of 300 grams, and we are testing it on our line production, and it's going well. So by the end of the year, we should use this bottle for La Vieille Ferme. So this is a great news. We have been signatory of the Sustainable Wine Bottle Weight Accord. So we are going to respect it with the weight of our bottles. We are also looking at the recycled content in the glass. Because La Vieille Ferme white and wine is now in dark bottle, so it contains more recycled content in comparison to white bottles, which have around 20% of recycled content. Dark bottle have 80% of recycled glass, so that's very interesting. And we are also working with our supplier of glass. For example, Veralia has launched a furnace which is working with electric energy and no gas. So this is impacting the carbon footprint, which is very good. So we work with our partners to reduce the carbon footprints. And so packaging is the most important impact, but we are also working on our own sites to reduce the carbon. For example, in the investment of machines, we are looking for energy efficient machines, and we are always choosing the newest technology. And we are trying on our old machines to see if we can recover the heat to use it for our process in the wine. So instead of wasting some heat, we can use it again. We capture it and use it again. We are also working on our panel mix, solar panels to produce clean energy. We are step by step changing our vehicles to electric vehicles. So we are trying to reduce our impacts at every level of our business. So of course we are not perfect, but we try to do our best and to think about carbon in every decision that the company is making.
Okay.
We are also working on other packaging than glass, and I will let Gael speak about.
Thank you. Gail, just before you do that, Marie, let me just ask you a very simple question. What's driven this in your company? Is this a sort of family commitment to sustainability? Do you have to provide an endless business case, ROI justification for everything you do? What have been the drivers for your company to engage in this comprehensive approach?
I think it's a family business, and it's always been in the philosophy and the ADN of the family. For example, we have organic wines. We have never put the organic logo on the bottles. We don't want to do a lot of communication, but we think that we have to make things that have sense. So for us, it's logic to reduce the weight of the bottles. We have always doing it. It's not recent for the La Vieille Ferme. It had always been in the lightest bottle. So yes, I would say it's more the philosophy of the Famille Perrin.
Great. Well, you're obviously making cost savings as a result. So congratulations. Gail, sorry to keep you waiting. I know you wanted to add some further insights. Go ahead.
I have all my time needed. So hi everyone, I'm Gael Bertrand. I work at Famille Perrin with Marie. I'm especially working on packaging, and when I said packaging, I mean second and third packaging. So mostly cardboard and wooden crate or wooden boxes. I will talk a little bit about cardboard to continue the discussion Marie just had on glasses and on bottles. In cardboard, we remove the internal dividers on our more selling wines like La Vieille Ferme, or also known as a chicken wine. Internal dividers removing is called glass on glass. So maybe when you open up the cardboard, when you receive it, you can have just your 6 bottles. This technique, by placing bottles directly against each other, shrink to overall the dimensions of the box. And doing this, we have a lighter cardboard, and on the total volume, it's a significant change. So that's about the cardboard solution. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about it.
Well, I mean, if you have some further insight to share, it's fascinating because shipping wine in cardboard safely is not easy. And a friend of mine who owns a wine importer and store told me recently that DHL can drop things up to 1.5 meters, which I couldn't quite believe. And then I went and looked up, and it turned out to be true. And it's not always the case, right? But that level of kind of product security is really key.
We're lucky enough to have the control on the logistic chain, because we are bottling our wines and we have a logistic space, very massive space, where we can directly ship the orders with not with our trucks, but with the transport and enterprise we're working with. So we can have a little control on the breaking part.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, I think we all get a feeling of dread when we think of a nice case of wine dropping 1.5 meters in a warehouse. Hopefully that doesn't happen too often. And of course, you're kind of vertically integrated, or your move towards vertical integration must really help there. So we've got some great questions, but Gael, just to give you the chance, is there anything else you wanted to add? Because I think you guys have got a fascinating story, and I think Perrin is really the word is overused, but you really are, I think, an inspiration possibly for other producers that this stuff can be done. So if there's anything else you want to add before we take some questions, please do.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have, in Famille Perrin, as I just said, we are lucky enough to have numbers of fascinating fields of work. And we also have, for some years, our own wooden case manufacturing facility here in Provence, near to Orange, our production site. So we are able to make our own wooden box. So every wooden box that you can receive or buy to Famille Perrin have been made by our own collaborators. This workshop is our dedicated wooden crate facility, but we also work on bio-based materials or valorization of some of our byproducts, like grape pomace or vine shoots. But this kind of research and development activities, and it's not the heart of the subject here. But
I mean, it all counts. I mean, anything that reduces emissions, and one of the stats I've seen, after packaging, vineyard emissions can be up to 20% of the total footprint. So, anything you do there is really important. And of course, we'll be running many more sessions on vineyard sustainability in the coming months. So, Gael, thank you. I've got some great questions though, and one of them's, I think, for you and Marie to start with. So Robert Eden, who used the Q&A function, which company does Perrin use, asks Robert, to quantify your level of emissions? So I guess that Robert is asking, who do you work with an external provider that helps you quantify emissions?
Yes, we do it with Greenflex. I think it's a more French company. And we are collecting the data, and they are analyzing it and telling us results. And now this year we will do it with Orki. I think it's also a French company, but we have a company that help us to analyze the data, but it is us who provide and collect the data. It's very long to find all the data, but it takes time. But more often we do it, more easy it is.
Great, thank you. Well, I mean, Robert's clearly on a roll because he's got two other questions which are excellent. Which one for you, Sara, and one for you, David. David, the one for you is: do you value in your model carbon sequestration at a different level from carbon storage? Now, we could dive down a very technical carbon hole here, but it seemed like an interesting question to me, David.
Yes, yeah, I'd say it is an interesting question. And I mean, I assume we're talking about carbon sequestration in soils here, which is what's most commonly talked about, where regenerative agriculture and other practices are used to improve the carbon, the amount of carbon in the soil, where there is seemingly quite large potential for storing carbon in soils, which of course is amazing. And one of the large levers for fighting climate change from land use intensive practices such as agriculture. And the short answer is yes, we do. And when it comes to this, we of course make sure to follow originally the flag guidelines, now looking into the LSRS. I don't know if you follow the latest greenhouse gas protocol stuff coming out to make sure that it is up to standard for audits and so on. And the burden of proof when it comes to making claims on carbon sequestration of soils is quite high. But once that's followed, this can easily be entered into our system, and that means this can only be reported on farm level, and then it propagates through the system, so everyone downstream who buys the product with carbon sequestration in the soil gets the benefit from it and get to see how this sort of offsets part of the emission. So,
Okay,
yes.
great, thank you. And the question for you, Sara, does Systembolaget have a financial incentive model for producers to help them speed up the transition to decreasing emissions, either directly or via end consumer contributions? So this is a classic question I'm sure you've had many times before, Sara, which is, how are you going to help us all do this? And of course, appreciate, that's not always an easy one to answer, but over to you to take it on.
Before, I just want to say thank you to Marie and Gael for sharing what you are doing. I think it's really impressive, and it shows that there are a lot of things being done that can be used now when we have opened up our system for reporting. And I think also that when you have the data on a company level, it's not too difficult to do it on product level. It will help, no doubt. And also that you talk about cost savings is not seldom equivalent with saving carbon emissions. That said, financial model to support our ambition, as I said, will be to use the carbon footprint when we are evaluating our assortment, when we are steering our assortment, and also to help the consumer, the customers, to choose wisely. But first of all, David, we need the quality of the data, but the ambition is to open that channel and to use it from next year. But already this autumn, we believe that we will be able to share data on a general level to compare with reported data. So you can see this is the average, and this is what I've reported, and this is what it looks like in comparison. So I think that's going to be really useful.
Thank you. Great question here from Clara to Marie and Gael. What's your opinion on measuring to product carbon footprint level, as we've heard about from Sara, instead of on an organizational level, as you are already doing? Can you see benefits and risks to doing that at Perrin? So Marie, Gael, love to hear your views.
No, I think we could do it. To be honest, I didn't know about it before this webinar. But yeah, we can do it. Just we don't want to spend too much time on measuring carbon, and we prefer maybe to concentrate our efforts to doing actions to reduce, the carbon emission. But if it's easy to use and interesting for our clients, of course, we can look at it.
Excellent. Well, there's a member benefit for being a member of SWR. We've connected two organisations who might start collaborating more meaningfully. So that's great to hear. Good question here from Laszlo, quite a long one, so I'll try and summarise it. I guess it's probably for you, David. Laszlo is asking about motivation. How do we motivate the cultivation and land level towards primary data collection, given they may not have the resources and capacity to do the work themselves? What are the solutions available? And of course, if you go online and look for carbon measurement, GHG measurement solutions for land use, there's a huge plethora of organisations out there who can help. So how does one start to navigate this? David, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say this strikes kind of at the center of the problem we're aiming to solve, both was the reason why we founded this company and then what we're doing now with Systembolaget, which comes down to we need to get away from a situation where it's prohibitively work intensive and expensive to do the measurement, which is where we come from. And a lot of solutions, most solutions out there require a lot of work, a lot of work. There are 1,000 details. And the way our approach to this is that we have built, as I mentioned in the beginning, we modeled this from farm all the way up to retail. So key here is like if you get invited to our system, you report the farm stuff directly in the tool. And by that, I mean, you don't report farm footprints, you report activity data on the farm. So you report data such as yield levels, you report fertilizer types and amounts, your energy usage and so on. Data that any farmer would have readily available. The reporting should not take many minutes if they know the data. Of course, they might need to run around and look at some books and so on and figure out which grapes are grown on which field or whatever. So, I mean, a little bit of work. But the system is kind of built around you report what you have data for. Everything is pre-populated. So there will be all the parameters they don't have data for, they will already be pre-filled. So that and we then quantify how much of the data fields and how consequential are they, the ones that are added, and then indicate this downwards in the value chain. So I think, yeah, like this can be done in a way that is not particularly work intensive. And then, of course, depending on the level of analysis the farmer wants, I mean, there are farm tools that have 1,000 more dashboards and more stuff and bells and whistles. And for some farmers, this is definitely the way to go. For many of them, that's not necessarily where you want to start. So the reporting can be simple, and we're doing everything we can to make it simple. And if someone gets invited through our system with Systembolaget and upstream somewhere in their value chains and don't find it simple, please let us know. And we'll make sure to work whatever kinks out that are still there.
Thank you. Well, just about 10 minutes left. We've got some great questions here. This one's quite specific, so I'll throw it open to any of you to see if you want to answer, but it's an interesting one from Celia, I think it is. Looking at being an organic, 100% organic winery, they've conducted an organizational carbon footprint in accordance with ISO 14064. But they can't find specific data on the carbon footprint of organic grapes. So have to rely on data for conventional grape production. Now that's a very interesting one, opens perhaps a can of worms about what is the footprint, the true footprint of organic versus regenerative conventional. But any comments on that? I mean, that's quite a specific question, but it did seem quite interesting. So if I don't see any volunteers, I can move on. Anybody want to?
I can take the question. I mean, it's like what we would do here is that we would model your grapes, or like you could model them on our platform and invite the grower, and then they grow specific. The problem is that there are no large data sets on systematic differences in organic and conventional production. So it's hard to create large, good quality statistical data sets for this. But getting the details in, specifying yields and fertilizer types and all of that stuff is for anyone growing is short order. It can be done quickly. And then you'd have very specific farm level data on your grapes.
Thank you. Marie, I think you wanted to add something?
No, the same thing. I know that there are some specific tools, like David said, to measure different kinds of practices in the vineyard, and to have one specific data for organic.
Okay. Anyone, anything to add on that? Thank you. There is quite a short one here for you, Sara, which is quite an open question. Perhaps it's the transatlantic cultural divide on sustainability. I'm not sure. You can interpret this how you wish, Sara. But Ronald is asking, can you tell us a bit more about your experience in working with SAQ and LCBO in Canada? I'm fascinated to hear whatever you can tell us about that. But it's quite an open question. So whatever you choose to tell us.
It's a very open question, no doubt. No, but I believe there are so many professional, knowledgeable, passionate people at both these monopolies or these big retailers. So we have a good exchange of exchange of insights with them. So yeah, I think it's really good, and they are also sort of part of. We are meeting regularly, talking about actions for good working conditions and what we can sort of exchange ideas on what we can exchange ideas on.
And we're trying to do the same at SWR. One of the two of them is a member. We're hoping to get the other on board soon, and very much looking forward to collaborate. Well, there's almost out of time. I think there's one more question here I can see for you, David. The AI question. It seems like you can't even have a conversation about the weather these days without AI turning up. So we have to have the AI question. Presumably your data and tools do utilize AI. I mean, you can't really say no to that, can you?
No, we can't say no to that. Yes, we use AI, or else we wouldn't be able to calculate footprints for tens of thousands of products in a matter of days. We use AI for a few things. One is to categorize stuff to help us do finding what it means, ingredients and so on. What does it mean? What is it really? And then we use AI for some of the identification of sort of possible errors and improve. Like down the line, the plan is to also help with finding improvement potentials.
Great, thank you. This is my fun part of the webinar at the end, where I get to ask you all an unexpected question. I'd like you all to answer this individually. And it's a two-part one for each of you. David, I'll start with you. Firstly, what have you learned today in the last hour? And secondly, if you want to have one key message, one key sentence or idea that people remember from this webinar, what would that be? So first of all, what have you learned and what's your key message takeaway?
All right, good question. The first one I think would go to Famille Perrin. Sorry, I butchered your name probably. About the amount of work that is being done. I mean, we know there's a lot of work being done, but hearing quite enthusiastically about a lot of things being done, which gives me a lot of energy, considering what all we are about is making sure that type of work gets quantified and communicated so that their customers can see the value. And then the customers, if they're 5 steps removed, they can still see the value of that work being done. And then hearing this is being done already, I mean, that is amazing. I really like hearing that. And a sentence to remember by, I think like climate change reduction and all of this, it's about collaboration. We need to find ways to collaborate. There will be winners, lots of winners along the whole value chain. We will want to drink wine also in the future. Emissions can be reduced. There's just a question of, are you going to be one of the ones reducing and collaborating with suppliers and customers to make sure that we get there?
Thank you. I think you've stolen what someone else was going to say as well with the collaboration one. But I'm going to ask everyone anyway. Marie, let me ask you next. So what have you learned today and what's the one thing you'd like everyone to remember from the last hour?
I learned about the PCF, which is very interesting, and we will look about it and the different ways to measure and share the data. And for the thing I would like to say, I would also say the collaboration is very important in the whole value chain. So first with our supplier to see if we can purchase lower carbon things and how to reduce together. Very important to speak with our partners. And also from the client part, what are they expecting? It's also important to consider. And we are very happy if we can inspire others to do the same actions and Famille Perrin, and very happy to help if someone has questions on what we are doing.
Great. Well, we're happy to do connections. Gail, over to you.
Yeah, at the beginning of this webinar, when Sara was talking, I think I wrote a sentence that can answer to your question. I think there is a thin border between opportunity, requirement, and regulation in terms of carbon footprinting calculation. So I think this is a sentence that can answer to your question. And the other thing I learned is there is difference between PCF and maybe LCA, life cycle assessment. And I think I have to check more in details the difference between these 2 points.
Okay. And what's the one thing you'd like viewers of this webinar to take away? If they could just remember one thing, what do you think it should be out of what you've been saying, for example?
Like Mary said, I think the PCF is something that can be very useful for us on two different products, or maybe I can say three. The product, which is wine in the bottle, and maybe the packaging. When I say packaging, I talk about wooden boxes that can be kept by the different customers, and maybe this particular product deserves a PCF or an LCA, like I just said, but I have to check more in details these differences.
Great. Well, thank you. Sara, let me give the final word to you before we close.
Everything's been said. And
That's
David,
the problem with going last. I know, sorry. Someone has to go last.
We know each other by now. No, but Marie and Gail, I think that was what I learned today was really what you are doing and the efforts you are putting behind what is such an important way forward when it comes to speed up what we are doing to limit the carbon footprint. It is urgent. So thank you so much for that. I'm grateful. And obviously, David, it's about doing this together, and Toby, it's about doing this together. And I'm so thankful for having the opportunity to be here and to be part of Sustainable Wine Roundtable. What I would like to sort of the last word now is there's an opportunity with the tool that we are now making available for those who are wish to participate. And I think that it's going to be step by step. It's about doing it together, be experimental, be curious to go into it and start elaborating on what can be achieved and learn and reach out the hand to say that we have learned this. What do you do? So I'm looking forward to continue the journey together.
Thank you. Well, that's a great note to end on. So we're exactly on time, and I'm almost losing my voice. So time to close. But I hope you've all learned a lot in the last hour. I certainly have. So really like to thank Marie, Gail, David, and Sara for their contributions, and you, the audience. As I mentioned, we will be distributing this as a recorded audio podcast. You can find it on your podcast channel. Look for Sustainable Wine. You'll find it on our website and in our newsletter. And of course, if you'd like to become a member of SWR and join the collaboration journey with us, you're most welcome, and we're happy to send you details. And if we can assist in connecting anyone related to this call, we're happy to try and do that. And it just remains for me to thank the SWR team for putting this together, Luke and Delaney particularly, and Ilva as well. Behind the scenes, thank you all. We'll be back with more of these soon, and I'll let you get on with your evening and your day. So thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.